Hi everybody, it's Michael from MST Adventures, and we're here doing a quick review of some of our different stand-up paddleboard paddles. I'm going to start off with the most budget-friendly paddles and then kind of move my way up as we get to the higher-end paddles that we have. So I'm going to start with a paddle that was offered for review by one of our Sandia Lakes friends, Eric. He brought this paddle with him. It's made by Jobe. It's called the Freedom Stick. This is a great beginner paddle, very budget friendly. It's $70 new, and it's a two-piece paddle, so it doesn't pack down quite as small. It does, however, have a fiberglass shaft, which helps reduce the weight quite a bit. The plastic blade is definitely able to take a little bit of abuse, but it's also very soft and it does have quite a bit of flex. This particular paddle would be great for kids or anyone who might have like a shoulder injury or worried about that because the blade itself does have so much flex. That you're not too worried about straining anything as you paddle. It has a small shaft with a small grip, which is great again for kids or with folks with smaller hands. However, when paddling with it, it was difficult to brace. It has zero offset, meaning the paddle blade itself is completely in line with the shaft. Makes it difficult to brace to stop yourself from falling over. But it does slice well through the water for in-water recovery strokes. So it's good for slow, gentle paddling, but it was definitely difficult to sprint with. So the next paddle I tried was the Boost by Cannon Paddles. This retails for $105. It comes in a three-piece configuration. It does also come in a two-piece configuration. This version has the fiberglass shaft with the plastic blade. You can also get the same version with an aluminum shaft and plastic blade, or fiberglass shaft and fiberglass blade. The prices vary accordingly, so the aluminum shaft is cheaper and the fiberglass blade will cost you a little bit more. So this is a little bit heavier of a paddle than the Jobe. However, it was definitely a lot stiffer. The blade itself, it actually, while it still has a low aspect shape, it was concave. It had a little bit of a dihedral in it as well. It does have a bit of an offset, which is nice, so the bracing was okay. And it slices okay, but again, that curved blade tends to catch the water a little bit more, so it's not quite as easy to do your in-water recovery strokes. The blade does a good job of catching the water for a slower casual stroke, but when you start to use it for a sprint stroke, it really does just become splashy and it's not nearly as effective. So the next paddle I tested out was the Accent Ride. So this paddle is kind of interesting. It definitely has a different shape than all the other ones that we have. It's a very long, narrow blade with a very noticeable curve in it. This paddle is also the only aluminum shaft paddle that we did for this test. So the aluminum shaft adds weight to the paddle. And you can definitely feel that, but it's not a huge amount of weight. One of the unique things about this paddle is it has what's called a lever lock for the adjustment mechanism, which is interesting, but I didn't really find it to have a real benefit or drawback one way or the other. This is a two-piece paddle. It retails for $110. That lever lock grip is a little bit bigger than either the Canon or the Jobe, so it may not be great for kids. And again, that really heavily curved blade shape, it really reduces the effectiveness of a brace and how well the paddle slices through the water. So now we're going to move on to kind of what I call the mid-grade paddles. And for this paddle, I tested the NRS Rush. So the NRS Rush retails for $170. It's a little bit more expensive again. It does have a fiberglass shaft and a fiberglass blade. It comes in a two-piece configuration. So this paddle has a higher aspect blade shape. The blade is also totally flat on the power face. However, it does have approximately an 8-degree offset. The flat blade does a great job of transmitting that power from your arms down to the board. And it also does a fantastic job of bracing. So you can really feel that, if you're starting to fall and you do a good brace, you really feel it gives you a really good stable platform to right yourself. It does have a little bit of a larger handle, so again, smaller users might have an issue with that. It does slice well through the water for its in-water recovery strokes, and it is very light. Another paddle I wanted to bring up but didn't test here because we actually had it rented out was the NRS Quest. And the NRS Quest is basically the plastic bladed version of the Rush. And other than a little bit of extra weight and a little bit softer, so not quite as stiff, they're pretty much the same paddle. It also does really well for a high cadence stroke, so it is great for racing. However, because it is a fiberglass blade, you do need to be careful when you're in low water that you don't end up chipping or breaking the blade. And the NRS Quest retails for $150. So if you ask me for a $20 difference, I'd rather go for the slightly more expensive Rush paddle that has a fiberglass blade and is a little bit stiffer. So the last paddle that I tested for this review is a fully carbon paddle from NoSnow. NoSnow is a great little company in Mesa, Arizona. We've got a couple of their paddle boards and one of these carbon paddles. And for $210, it's probably the best value carbon paddle on the market. It does come in a 3-piece configuration. It also comes in a fixed configuration, so you can specify the exact length you want. Weight-wise, it's about the same as the NRS Rush in its 3-piece configuration. If you have the fixed length, it'll be a little bit lighter. It is super stiff, so that's one thing that Carbon really excels at, is being a very stiff paddle blade. So if you're serious about paddleboarding, you really want to lay down some power. So if you're really serious about paddleboarding and want to lay down some power for a race or just a really good fitness session, this paddle is going to do it for you. This was the stiffest paddle that I tested. It again has about an 8-degree offset and a flat blade. One thing with this is that it is such a stiff paddle that it's important to be using good technique. So it's not necessarily beginner friendly, but it is definitely an excellent paddle to move into. There's a slight wobble I noticed with the handle section of the 3-piece paddle. However, it's not noticeable when you're actually using it. The only time you really feel it is if you're standing on shore and messing with it. So what's my final verdict? For the budget-conscious people, I definitely recommend the Canon Boost. For those looking at a mid-range paddle, I highly recommend the NRS Rush. This is a paddle that I use for the most part on my own. And then if you're wanting to get a nicer, higher-end carbon paddle, I would recommend the NoSnow full carbon paddle, and I would go ahead and recommend at that point to get a fixed length. If you're really wanting to get a lighter, stiff paddle that's great for racing, I would go for the fixed length versus the adjustable length. And remember, if you have any questions about equipment for paddleboarding, kayaking, or really just about anything else, give us a call or drop us an email and we'd be glad to help you out.